Top of the day to the enthusiasts. I am Sky Guy R12 Turn, and it's been quite a while since I have uploaded anything on YouTube.
What? What the f?
But don't worry guys, I'm back and I'm better than ever. But before we get into the topic, let's give a round of applause to my subscribers who lasted that long without an upload. Ah yes, Rocky Mountain Construction. My favorite coaster manufacturer out there. It's not hard to see why. For over a decade, this manufacturer has been making hybrids and single rail coasters that leave us enthusiasts drooling over and ranking them near the absolute top of our lists. In fact, I think they're so excellent that literally every roller coaster they've made is top 200 in the world worthy in my book, which is something no other coaster manufacturer can compare. I mean, just look at their lineup and tell me why not. However, I wouldn't say RMC is completely flawless, and in my opinion, the biggest flaw with this manufacturer is their names. Today I'm going to go through every one of them, giving them a score out of 10 to see how big this flaw is. So without further ado, let's get started. New Texas Giant, 0 out of 10. Yes, I know exactly what you're thinking. You may even think that the name sounds impressive, but I'll tell you why I really dislike it. This coaster was once a Woody called Texas Giant. I would have given that name at least a 7.5 out of 10. But then, it was time for RMC to turn this into the best ride in the park. They came up with the best name possible. New Texas Giant. You hear me? New Texas Giant. The new is just a poor excuse for a name. Thank God RMC has gotten better with names over time, because this was just a horrible first attempt. Outlaw Run, 10 out of 10. The theming, setting, and pacing make the name. The ride experience as a whole makes you feel like you're zooming through the trees on the dirt surface just like a cowboy on his horse. Not to mention, the layout is filled with twisted track that mimics the craziness of that sensation. And to end the ride, there's also something you hear on the final brake run that I just can't name what it is. Sorry. But regardless, all those factors together make Outlaw Run earn its perfect score. Iron Rattler, 6.5 out of 10. Most of the points given goes to the name sounding cool and hardy. But the iron is your typical RMC fashion and doesn't help it gain more points. How ununique. Medusas Steel Coaster, 0 out of 10. Similar reason to New Texas Giant, which is why it has that score. But let me explain the differences. Back as a wooden coaster, it was called Medusa, and then when RMC tried to figure out the name of the ride, they got the idea of naming it after steel and the type of amusement ride it was. Again, poor excuse of a name for a transformation. On to the next one.
Goliath!
5.5 out of 10. Well, would you look at that? It's one of the coaster names that brings the identity of Six Flags. Yes, we enthusiasts know the name, especially if your home park is a Six Flags park. It gets most of its points for how popular it is, and for how humorous it can be at times. But I also like it when the coaster is tall or something like that. I mean, this coaster did break the record for the tallest wooden coaster in the world, so I can totally see why Six Flags decided to name it. Now, the reason that this isn't getting a higher score is because it's typical Six Flags fashion and just an unoriginal name. So, moving on, nothing else I can say. Twisted Colossus, 6 out of 10. Some of you may be surprised that I'm giving this a higher score than you think, but let me explain. Before RMC came to this park, Colossus was a super famous wooden coaster that not only was a GP magnet, but put the entire park on the map. Then the park teased the removal of this coaster, and people were devastated. Six Flags Magic Mountain knew they needed to work on a project worthy for the GP, and then they introduced Twisted Colossus. Twisted Colossus. It mainly gets this much points because they kept the name of the original with. Finally, the coaster was a success, and the GP were able to move on from the old to the new. Six Flags Magic Mountain should feel very proud for making this coaster. Wicked Cyclone, 5.5 out of 10. I appreciate that the Wicked is different and hasn't been used on any other RMCs yet. But this is yet another one of those RMC names that's typical and nothing special. Storm Chaser, 9 out of 10. Now this is a name you wouldn't expect on an RMC. Considering that its wooden predecessor was called Twisted Twins, it's very different and earned some of those points. But another reason why I love it is because it sounds awesome, and I'm sure I'm not alone with that. The name turned out to be so brilliant that it caught the eye of 2 more parks to use on their next coaster in 2021. That should tell you why it earns this high score. Joker, 4 out of 10. Yet another name that Six Flags likes to smack onto their coasters. You theme it to the Joker, very normal, nothing else to say. Lightning Rod, 8 out of 10. One of the only times where the world's best coaster is not a 10 out of 10. Not as good as Outlaw Run, but still an awesome name. Lightning Rod is themed to a hot rod, a vehicle from the 1950s that was built to race at breakneck speeds, which makes it fast as lightning. Plus, it broke the record for the world's fastest wooden coaster when it opened, and even though it's now been slowed down multiple times and been converted partially into a steel coaster, I would still give the pacing a higher score and call it fast as lightning. Just like in the name, Lightning Rod. Wildfire, 10 out of 10. The more it's in my head, the more I realize this coaster is so similar to Outlaw Run in many ways. First off, the setting. This coaster is located at a zoo, so there can only be so much trees and bird's eye views to come across. Second off, the pacing. Wildfire hauls through the course like you're escaping a wildfire that ignited straight out of Colmartin Zoo itself. Third off, the vibe. To be honest, it's really hard for me to explain it, but what I can say is that Colmartin may have heard of Silver Dollar City before they built this. I mean, the latter has a B&M looper under the same name, so who knows? It's just a possibility. But true or not, Wildfire is a coaster that does a lot of things similar to Outlaw Run, but better, excluding the name. Twisted Timbers, 3 out of 10. I know this name's got the alliteration, but in general, I think it's lazy. Plus, a few enthusiasts call King's Dominion the sister park of Kings Island, and the year before they opened Twisted Timbers, Kings Island had a coaster called Mystic Timbers. So I have a theory that King's Dominion reused the Timbers in the name of that GCI to this one. Combine that with what you see on a normal RMC name, and you have a name that doesn't help your opinion on the coaster. Steel Vengeance, 5.5 out of 10. The backstory is the biggest strength for this name. One day, Maverick was causing mischief in Frontier Town, and a while after that, Blackjack, Digger, and Chess built the wildest ride in the West to get their revenge. For a coaster that's considered by enthusiasts as the greatest of all time, I think Vengeance goes well with the name. But I deducted points because of the steel. You might think it actually goes well with the Vengeance in the name, and to be honest, it could. But steel is something you see on a normal RMC name, and that's lazy. Wonder Woman Golden Lasso Coaster, 4 out of 10. Why do you need the word coaster in it? That makes it 5 words in one name. Now, I don't have a problem with very long coaster names as much as the normal enthusiast does, but I can see why you would give this an even lower score. The name would have been fine if it was just Wonder Woman Golden Lasso, because the coaster is supposed to resemble her lasso. But the coaster is pointless and easily takes off points. Just like another RMC single rail coaster I'm going to talk about, Twisted Cyclone, 3 out of 10. This has gotta be the least original name RMC came up with. It's what you get when you mix Twisted Timbers with Wicked Cyclone. But the name has redeeming qualities. As a wooden coaster, it was called the Georgia Cyclone, which was based off of the world-famous Coney Island Cyclone, and the layout is filled with twisted track. However, I can't look past the lack of originality, which is why this name's getting a low score. RailBlazer, 10 out of 10. This might as well be my favorite RMC name for a variety of reasons. 1. It represents the model of this coaster, the RMC Single Rail Coaster, or RMC Raptor. 2. The pacing is top-notch, which makes the ride literally live up to its name, blazing through the single rail track in a blink of an eye. And 3. The name is also a pun, and for those of you who don't know, I absolutely love puns. But you might ask, why is the name a pun? A pun is defined as a form of wordplay that exploits multiple meanings of a term or of similar sounding words that intend to be humorous and funny. And it looks like I may have explained it several seconds ago, so in conclusion, those are the 3 big reasons that make me believe RailBlazer is my favorite RMC name. Hakuge, 7.5 out of 10. The white supports and blue track go well with the colors of whale species, and the name is white whale in Japanese. But I feel like the ride experience is a little too crazy for a ride that's also known as white whale. When I think of a white whale compared to coasters, the biggest I can dream about is a tall but graceful roller coaster that takes it easy, like a B&M Hyper or Steel Dragon 2000 in the same park. But Hakuge, that world-class ride experience kind of overdoes the name. Untamed, 0.5 out of 10. I guess the main purpose of this name is to describe the ride experience in one word, and RMC came up with this. Are we supposed to believe that the ride experience is its name? I mean, we might if we ask someone who has ridden it. Even worse, there's no logic behind its wooden coaster counterpart that relates to this name, so I have to deduct even more points to a score this close to a 0. So overall, this name sucks. It's ridiculous and is the main reason why I expect this coaster to be overrated. Just like Zadra, 0 out of 10. Now this is the definition of a name that works terribly with the ride experience. Now, you're probably thinking that the name sounds great and fits the overall coaster perfectly, but don't be fooled. This coaster is in Poland, so we may need to look if there's a translation. And there is. Zadra is Polish for splinter. Now, you may argue that's why Energylandia calls this a wooden coaster, and that's a fair argument. But don't you see? Zadra is not a wooden coaster. For those who still don't see my point, think of it this way. You're about to see the trailer of Steel Vengeance, and when they get to the name of that coaster, it's instead called Horse, or Revenge, or Sheriff Trio. How would you react to that? See? This is the same situation to a coaster that's almost as good as Steel Vengeance claimed by enthusiasts, yet the coaster is known as Splinter. This is why it's my least favorite RMC name. I hate it, and it's why I believe this coaster isn't better than coasters like Pantheon, Flying Dinosaur, Lek Coaster, or Hyperion in the same park. Stunt Pilot, 7 out of 10. The theming makes some of this name. You can find a few decent pieces of detail on this coaster. And to me, the RMC Raptor model kind of goes good with an airplane theme. Finally, the layout of this coaster in general is like doing stunts like its name suggests. Jersey Devil Coaster, 7 out of 10. Yet another RMC name that would have been better off without the coaster, but I guess Six Flags Great Adventure added it so we couldn't be confused with the state's ice hockey team, the New Jersey Devils. Without the coaster, it would have been an 8, but I will give the name credit for how cool it sounds. It's cool and striking, just like the Devil and the hockey team itself. Iron Gwazi, 0.5 out of 10. This name is close to a 0, but I'll explain that one saving grace later. Before it was Iron Gwazi, the name of its wooden coaster counterpart back in its early years was Gwazi, and it had 2 dueling sides, one themed to a lion and one themed to a tiger. For those who don't know, a Gwazi is a creature with the head of a tiger and the body of a lion, so the theme worked perfectly for the old. But then, it was time for this coaster to be announced. Busch Gardens Tampa re-themed it to a crocodile and called it Iron Gwazi. That makes absolutely no freaking sense to remove the lion and tiger theme, but keep the lion and tiger name with the crocodile theme. On top of that, you slap the word iron onto it to make the name even more boring, and it doesn't help since the iron is typical RMC fashion. It seems like they could have done so much with the name that would have done this hyper justice, and they didn't. So you may be wondering, what's the saving grace with this ride? It's actually not a bad idea for Busch Gardens Tampa to re-theme it to a crocodile after a lion and tiger theme, because if you didn't know, crocodiles attack lions and tigers, just like how RMC track got rid of that rough GCI track. And that's why the name is saved from getting a score of 0. Wonder Woman Flight of Courage, 3.5 out of 10. I would have liked it more if it was called Wonder Woman Flight of Truth. Sure, it's not named after her lasso and she can fly, but it would have brought her more character. And if there's one RMC name that gives me Six Flags vibes, it would be this. There's nothing else for me to say about this name, but we're moving on to the last one. Airy Force 1, 8 out of 10. Yes, I know a lot of you people may be surprised that I'm giving this a high score, but let me tell you something. Did you know that this coaster is named after the owner of Fun Spot, John Airy Sr., and is themed to flying, which he loves to do? The name is supposed to be a play on words with his last name, and I think it worked well enough. Wait, hold on. What? You did know? Then why don't people like this name afterwards? It has what it needs to get a good score. The theming, the dedication to its owner, the play on words. I don't understand why people don't like this name. But there you have it, my review on all 24 RMC names. As you can see, my favorites included Outlaw Run, Wildfire, and most of all, RailBlazer. While my least favorites consisted of New Texas Giant, Medusas Steel Coaster, and most of all, Zadra. Before I go, I would like to give a special shout out to Theme Park Avenue for shouting me out in his video of the same topic. He has quite different opinions from me, as well as some good coaster related content that you can't miss. So if you like this video, please make sure to check out his. Links in the description. And while you're at it, I would thoroughly ask you nicely to subscribe to the channel for more roller coaster and other related content coming to this channel in the future. Don't forget to check out my Roblox account, where you can friend, follow me, or have the rare chance of playing a Roblox game with me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.